Right. This section is all about combining complex numbers. So we're going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So adding and subtracting is pretty straightforward. You want to put like terms together. So basically you put together anything with an I and anything without an I. So for the first one, I would put the 4 and the 7 together. So 4 plus 7 would be 11. And then I would put the negative I with the 2i. So negative I plus 2 would be 1i. Just make sure you're doing the correct operation. So we were adding here. For number 2, be 6 minus 1. And then negative 4 minus negative 5. So negative 4 minus negative 5 would be positive 1. So if you're having trouble with the double negatives, make sure that you use your calculator. And then the last one, there's just a little bit more to it. So I have 12 minus negative 9 plus negative 5. So 12 minus negative 9 would be 21. Plus negative 5 would be 16. Type in your calculator. And then I have 9i plus 4i, which would be 13i. So basically, just put your i's together and your numbers without i's together, and then be careful if you're subtracting them with the double negatives. And that's it for adding and subtracting. For multiplying, you're going to FOIL or distribute. So it's just like what you do in algebra. The main rule that you have to remember at the end is I squared equals negative 1. So this rule I'm going to bring up a bunch. So anywhere you get an I squared, you can replace it with a negative 1. So for instance, for the 4, you would distribute 8i. So act like it's an x. So 8i times negative 2 is negative 16i. And then 8i times I would be 8i squared. And this is where the rule comes in. This I squared is literally replaceable with a negative 1. So you replace the whole I squared with negative 1. So then this is really 8 times negative 1. So we get negative 16i minus 8 instead of plus 8. Because I squared became negative 1. And then 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. So you should not have any I squares in your answers because it gets replaced. Basically flips your sign. So for the next one, I'm going to FOIL. So 7 times negative 3. 7 times 2i. Negative 4i times negative 3i. And negative 4i times 2i. And then just like when you FOILed in algebra, you got to make sure your like terms are together. So I'll do this in 2 steps. So 14 plus 12 would be positive 26i. And then remember, wherever you see an I squared, this is like negative 1. So really this is negative 8 times negative 1, which is positive 8. And now I have negative 21 plus 8. Which would be negative 13. So negative 13 plus 26i. So let's FOIL this. For number 6, we FOIL 6 times 6. 6 times negative 3. 3 times 6. And 3 times 3i would be negative 9i squared. So combine like terms and then replace the I squares with negative 1. So negative 18 plus 18, these actually cancel. And then remember, I squared can be replaced with negative 1. So this is really negative 9 times negative 1. So really 36. And then this over here becomes plus 9. So 36 plus 9 is 45. Because the i's went away. And then I squared became negative 1. And then the last one is 5 plus 8i squared, meaning you write it twice in FOIL. So 5 plus 8i times 5 plus 8i. So 25 plus 40i plus 40i plus 64i squared. So 40i plus 40i is 80i. And then this is like a negative 1. So then 64 times negative 1 is like minus 64. And now I can put together the 25 and the 64. So 25 minus 64 would be negative 39. And then when we go to the back for division, what you want to do is you want to get rid of any i's in the denominator. So how you do that is you multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate, meaning the opposite side of the denominator. So this is minus 2i, so I'm going to multiply by plus 2i. And I'm just going to FOIL at the top and FOIL at the bottom. So the top is going to FOIL to 5 plus 10i plus 3i plus 6i squared. And then in the bottom, what ends up happening is that you should get two middle terms that cancel. And then put your like terms together in the top. So this is like negative 1. So 5 minus 6 is negative 1. 10 plus 3 is 13. And then in the bottom, they cancel. And this is really like a plus 4 because this is negative 1. So 1 plus 4, you'd get a 5 in the bottom. Same thing for number 9. I want to get rid of this positive 4i, so I multiply by negative 4i. Whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. So when I multiply by negative 4i, I get 20i plus 12i squared in the top. And then in the bottom, I get negative 16i squared. And then anywhere you see an I squared is like a negative 1. So the top really is 12 times negative 1, which is negative 12. And then the bottom is really negative 16 times negative 1, which is positive 16.